Living in Canada, it's pretty easy to take our natural environment for granted because we seemingly have a lot of it. Fresh water, fresh air, trees and ponds, lakes and oceans, parks and wilderness areas, and a host of natural ecosystems. But if we thought of these things as natural capital and we kept it in a bank account like we do our money, what we'd likely see is our collective savings of natural capital is dwindling. Part of the problem is we don't measure or value our stock of natural capital, making it rather easy to deplete without much notice or consequence. Natural capital can have a tremendous impact on our daily lives, our health, mental health, and our social and economic well-being, so we need to do better. Historically, the only form of natural capital seen as productive was land for agricultural purposes and other natural resources used in production. It was also seen as fixed in supply. But the recognition that environmental systems play a vital role in social and economic well-being has led to a much broader definition of natural capital. The Capitals Coalition defines natural capital as the stock of renewable and non-renewable resources, such as plants, animals, air, water, soil, and minerals that yield a flow of benefits to people. Not just traditional economic benefits, but all kinds of benefits valued by people. The Nature Conservancy estimates that nature provides the planet with more than $72 trillion worth of benefits in the form of free goods and services. In Ontario, the Greenbelt provides over $2.6 billion per year worth of ecosystem services. Ecosystems are essentially living, breathing, natural infrastructure, the interaction of land, air, waterways, plants, animals, and other organisms, and even the weather. And the services they provide include pest control, pollinating insects, carbon storage, oxygen production, air pollution mitigation, water filtration, flood regulation, and biodiversity. All the things that are vitally important for our food supply and our own health and leisure. The Boreal ecosystem, which runs essentially the whole width of Canada in the north, has been valued at $93.2 billion, the equivalent to 8% of Canada's GDP, for which one important benefit is CO2 absorption that helps fight climate change. British Columbia's lower mainland's water ecosystems, such as the wetlands and coastal areas, provide an estimated $30 to $60 billion worth of services. Some of our natural resources are used in direct economic production, such as lumber, oil, gas, iron ore, etc. Others are used in farming, such as manure, peat moss, pine needles, water, soil, and air. Some extend to medicines and related products such as molds for antibiotics, horseshoe crab blood used to test vaccines. Other benefits include flood control, recreation, climate mitigation, and even mental health. Studies have shown that time spent in nature, parks, and green spaces reduces stress, anxiety, depression, and mental fatigue. But according to the United Nations Environment Program, human activities pertaining to the misuse of natural capitals are costing the global economy approximately $6.6 trillion a year. That's nearly 11% of global GDP. Indeed, burning just 1 gallon of gas, or 3.8 liters, results in more than $1 worth of environmental degradation in terms of greenhouse gases. Climate change is the obvious example of the consequences of these human activities. Rising average temperatures and more extreme weather events such as droughts, flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes, and forest fires. But another such consequence that has undoubtedly touched all of our lives involves the encroachment into once uninhabited natural environments, exacerbated by deforestation, environmental degradation, and climate change. The natural habitat of wildlife is being eroded, fostering greater human-animal contacts, for which the consequence is the emergence of new, potentially deadly pathogens. In other words, infectious diseases like COVID-19. Tackling these issues through policy is challenging because it requires immense cooperation within and between nations. A company or individual that dumps carbon and other pollutants into the air or toxins into the water isn't just using up their share of air and water, they're using up ours. One country's poor environmental protection policies not only impacts its citizens, it impacts people everywhere because we share the same planet. One example of cooperative policy is the Paris Climate Agreement, adopted by nearly every nation in 2015. The agreement aims to substantially reduce global greenhouse gas emissions in an effort to limit the increase of global temperature to 2 degrees above the pre-industrial levels. But words are not action. We also need to shift this long-held notion that our natural resources are essentially free. Unvalued resources tend to be overused. Air, water, and cod are examples. And we need to stop ignoring the larger social, economic, and aesthetic value these resources hold. But as long as natural capital remains non-visible and off balance sheets and undervalued by the rest of us, then those causing its depletion will be rewarded with profits rather than be held accountable for their misuse. The good news is there are a number of organizations working towards changing this. In 2012, the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development spearheaded a Natural Capital Declaration, whereby 40 CEOs agreed to integrate natural capital considerations into loans, equity, fixed income, and insurance products, as well as in their accounting, disclosure, and reporting frameworks. The Capitals Coalition, a consortium of international organizations and businesses, has also been working on progressing this agenda, and there are others. Individual citizens have a role to play too, such as reducing energy consumption, reducing pesticide use, creating yards that are less harmful to the environment, and by choosing to not purchase from or invest in companies that ignore their impact on the natural environment. But perhaps more importantly, citizens have a role to play in advocating for policies that will address these issues more comprehensively, effectively, and fairly. We take action when we express our views through the civic and political processes. And government has a role to play through public policy tools, such as incentives, subsidies for electric cars, home and business energy retrofits, and carbon taxes. Where incentives are not sufficient, regulations such as those that limit or prohibit certain emissions from industry, or mandates such as bans on harmful products such as incandescent light bulbs, or through legislation that requires the valuation of natural capital by public and private organizations in their financial and annual reports. The culture around natural capital is slowly changing. Organizations are supporting the notion of environmental, social, and governance in their actions. Governments are more aware than ever for the need to invest in environmental and climate change action. The greater value that individual citizens are placing on natural assets is reflected in the growth of ecotourism and the demand for green products. And most of us are becoming more aware of the impact of our own individual footprint upon the planet. Natural capital, a pathway forward to building a better Canada.